It was a cold, overcast morning in the outskirts of Austin, Texas, when a biker gang known as the Iron Titans rolled into town. They were a rough group, known for their lawless antics and their trail of wreckage through small towns. But this time, they were looking for trouble at the wrong place. The Crisis Response Center, an off-the-grid operation run by ex-military personnel, was about to face a test no one could predict. Sergeant Major Jackson Jack Lawson was sitting in his office, looking at a map of the region. Once a part of the Army's elite special forces, Jack had retired early and now ran the Crisis Response Center, a covert operation dedicated to handling high-risk rescue missions and providing psychological rehabilitation for soldiers, cops, and first responders who'd faced the worst of the worst. His team was small but elite, and they were trusted by the government to respond to situations no one else could touch. The sound of roaring engines broke the morning silence. Outside, a dozen motorcycles pulled up in front of the center. Jack peered through the blinds, narrowing his eyes. His instincts kicked in. The Iron Titans were no strangers to him. He had crossed paths with a few of them during his time in the military, and their reputation for wreaking havoc was well known. But today, they were walking into a place where trouble wasn't just invited. It was handled the bikers, led by their rough-and-tumble president. Victor Viper Rajas swaggered up to the front door of the center. Viper was a large man, with a deep scar running across his face, a product of a knife fight he'd barely survived. His gang wasn't just notorious for fighting other gangs. They enjoyed picking fights with anyone who looked weak or vulnerable, and they often preyed on local businesses. The Crisis Response Center, with its remote location, was their next target. One of the bikers, an obnoxious younger guy named Trigger, knocked hard on the door, then kicked it open without waiting for an answer. The door flew off its hinges, and the room went silent inside. Jack's team stood in tactical readiness. There were 5 of them, each one a specialist in a different field, all former soldiers. The one who was most likely to get into a confrontation was Jake Hawk Carter, a former Navy SAAL with a sharp temper. But even Hawk knew when to stand down. Jack, however, stood up and walked toward the door with a steady hand on his sidearm. Viper grinned when he saw Jack. The two had met before, years ago, during a tense standoff. The smile that spread across Viper's face was a challenge. Sergeant Major Lawson, right? Viper said, leaning against the doorframe. Word around town is this place is some kind of tough guy sanctuary. We were just looking for some help. Jack didn't flinch. He'd seen enough to know that Viper wasn't here for help. He was here to intimidate help. Jack's voice was low and calm, betraying no emotion. From us, you'd be better off asking your demons for advice. A few of the bikers laughed, their hands resting on the grips of their leather jackets. But Viper's eyes narrowed. You don't know who you're dealing with, old man. We don't take kindly to people who try to hide behind walls. This place? It's about to be our new territory. You should leave, or we'll make you. Jack stepped forward, his eyes cold and steady. This place is not for people like you, he said. You want to test that? Let's see how it works out for you. Eeper's grin faltered for just a moment, enough to show that he recognized Jack's calm demeanor as the sign of someone who'd seen far worse than what his gang could dish out. But then Viper shifted his weight, motioning for his men to take action within seconds. Chaos erupted. Trigger lunged forward, fists flying. But before he could reach Jack, Hawk had already moved in with a speed that belied his size, subduing Trigger in an instant with a series of well-placed moves. Another biker, Razor, tried to pull a knife, but Jake Hawk Carter disarmed him in a flash. Twisting the blade out of Razor's hand before pinning him to the ground with expert precision, Viper hesitated, sizing up the situation. He realized too late that his gang had just picked a fight with an entire team of soldiers who had no fear of fighting back. Jack took a step forward, his voice cold and calm. "You made a mistake, Viper," Jack said, his hand resting on his holstered pistol. "We don't back down." Not for anyone. Viper's cocky grin was gone now, replaced by a mix of confusion and fury. "You think you can stop us? We're the Iron Titans." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And we're ex-soldiers who can handle anything." It was clear that Viper wasn't willing to push any further, and the bikers, seeing their leader falter, began to back down slowly. Jack motioned for them to leave. "You've got one chance," Jack said, his voice firm. "Get on your bikes and get out of here. Now." The bikers exchanged uneasy glances. Victor looked at his men one last time, and then, finally, he nodded. "We'll be back for this," he spat, his voice low with fury, before he turned and led his gang out the door. As the sound of their engines faded into the distance, Jack turned to his team. "You know what they say," he said, his voice softening just slightly. "Don't mess with the wrong soldier." The team nodded, understanding all too well what Jack meant. This wasn't just about fighting. It was about survival, honor, and making sure the world knew that there was one place where people like the Iron Titans would never, ever win. The Crisis Response Center wasn't just a sanctuary for those who had been broken by the world. It was a place where warriors came to heal. And, if necessary, a place where they were ready to fight back.